The message glowed like toxic waste on her tablet screen. 3 words that detonated my entire existence. "He's out of town again? Want to come over?" I stood frozen in our bedroom, my half-packed suitcase forgotten on the bed, staring at her unlocked tablet as if it were speaking directly to me. The shower was still running. Steam billowed from under the bathroom door where Candace hummed tunelessly, oblivious that her world was about to end. My hand trembled as I swiped up, revealing not just a single indiscretion, but an archive of betrayal spanning years. Multiple men, hookup apps, email threads, photos I'll never be able to unsee. And worse, the mockery, the contempt, the calculated scheduling that coincided precisely with each of my business trips. I wasn't just being cheated on, I was being systematically ridiculed. "Darren," Candace called from the bathroom. "Can you grab my lotion from the nightstand?" I set the tablet down exactly where I'd found it and picked up her expensive French lotion. "Coming, dear," I replied, my voice steady despite the venom coursing through my veins. When I handed it to her through the cracked bathroom door, she didn't even look at me. 12 years of marriage, and she couldn't be bothered to meet my eyes. "Thanks," she muttered. "What time's your flight tomorrow?" 7 a.m., I answered, watching droplets slide down her bare shoulders. "I should be gone about 4 days." She smiled then, the kind of smile I now understood wasn't happiness to see me, but anticipation for when I'd be gone. "Perfect," she said. "I've got plans with the girls anyway." I nodded and closed the door. The girls. Right. That night, as she slept beside me, I made a decision. This would be the last time Candace Matthews would ever make a fool of me. My name is Darren Matthews. I'm 38 years old and work as a business development executive for a medical technology firm. Nothing flashy, nothing glamorous, just solid, necessary work that requires me to travel across the country securing contracts and maintaining client relationships. I'm the guy who shakes hands in boardrooms, explains products over dinner, and spends more nights in hotel rooms than his own bedroom. I met Candace when we were both 26. She was vibrant, ambitious, working in public relations, and climbing the corporate ladder with the kind of determined grace that made everyone notice her. I fell hard. We married within a year. For the first few years, everything seemed perfect. We bought a modest house in a good neighborhood, saved diligently, and built what I thought was a partnership. We agreed to delay having children until our careers were established. I worked longer hours, took on more clients, accepted more travel assignments. Candace decorated our home beautifully and hosted dinners for her colleagues. We looked like success. But somewhere around year 7, something shifted. The goodbye kisses grew perfunctory. The welcome home embraces cooled. When I'd call from hotel rooms, she'd rush me off the phone. At first, I blamed myself. I was tired, stressed, probably not as attentive as I should be. So I tried harder. I brought gifts from every city. I scheduled weekend getaways. I listened more intently when she spoke about her day. Nothing changed. If anything, the distance between us widened. Then came the small cruelties, the eye rolls when I mentioned upcoming trips, the barely disguised sighs when I talked about work, the way she'd mute me in conversations with her friends, cutting me off mid-sentence to talk over me. "Darren's just back from Cincinnati," she'd say with theatrical weariness. "Another one of his thrilling trips selling medical. What is it again, honey? Widgets or something?" Her friends would laugh. I'd force a smile, even as humiliation burned through me. But I persisted. I believed marriage was work, and sometimes you had to weather difficult seasons. I maintained our life insurance, our retirement accounts, our investment portfolio. I negotiated a better mortgage rate. I made sure her car was always serviced, and in return I got "off to another one of your pointless little trips" and "walking ATM in a cheap suit." But I never imagined she was cheating. Not until that message appeared on her tablet. Not until I saw 12 years of loyalty dissolve in front of my eyes. The next morning, I called my office and told them I had food poisoning. Then I called the airline and canceled my flight, selecting the option that wouldn't notify my work email. Next, I booked a room at the Courtyard Marriott downtown, just close enough to watch but not be seen. I left the house with my suitcase as usual. Candace hardly looked up from her phone as I walked out the door. "Try not to die of boredom in Pittsburgh," she said, her eyes still fixed on her screen. "I'll do my best," I replied, kissing her cheek. She leaned away slightly, as if my touch inconvenienced her. I drove around the block and parked 2 streets over, watching our house from a distance. 20 minutes later, Candace emerged in workout clothes I'd never seen, her hair and makeup done in a way she never bothered with for me anymore. She drove off in her Audi, the one I'd surprised her with on our 10th anniversary. I waited 15 minutes to ensure she wouldn't return, then went back inside using my key. I spent the next 3 hours installing small, wireless security cameras throughout our house. One in the living room bookshelf, one in the bedroom disguised as a phone charger, one in the hallway, hidden in a smoke detector. Voice-activated audio recorders in the bathroom and kitchen. The entire system fed directly to an app on my phone. Motion would trigger recording. I could watch in real time or review footage later. I left everything exactly as I found it and headed to my hotel room, where I spent the afternoon researching divorce attorneys, forensic accountants, and the specific language of our prenuptial agreement, which had been my father's insistence 12 years ago, a safeguard I'd once resented him for demanding. Now it would be my salvation. That evening, Candace texted, "Hope you arrived safe. Miss you." It was the first "miss you" text I'd received in months. I stared at it, wondering if there had ever been a time when she'd actually meant those words. "All good here," I replied. "Love you." Her response came quickly. "Love you too. Early meeting tomorrow, so heading to bed." I opened my surveillance app. Candace wasn't in bed. She was in our living room, drinking wine and taking selfies in lingerie I'd never seen before. Over the next 2 days, I built my case methodically. I met with the top divorce attorney in the city, a steely-eyed woman who nodded grimly as I laid out what I knew so far. I spoke with my financial advisor about protecting assets. I changed the beneficiaries on my life insurance. I contacted a locksmith, and I watched. I watched as Candace spent my travel money on new clothes and expensive wine. I watched as she took video calls with her friends, laughing about how boring I was, how predictable, how pathetic. "The man thinks a wild night is ordering dessert with dinner," she cackled to someone named Jen. "But at least he pays the bills while I have my fun." I watched her text multiple men, scheduling visits like a social secretary. "Tuesday's no good, that's Michael. Wednesday works, though?" On the 3rd evening, exactly as I had expected, my alert pinged. A tall, well-dressed man was at our front door. He had brought champagne. Candace welcomed him with a kiss that made my stomach clench. They didn't even bother with pretense, straight to drinking my imported whiskey while bad-mouthing me. "So the husband is," the man asked, refilling their glasses. "Pittsburgh," Candace laughed. "Selling medical equipment to doctors who don't want it. He'll be gone until Friday." "Lucky me," the man said, his hand sliding up her thigh. "Lucky us," she corrected, guiding his hand higher. "His trips are the only thing that make this marriage bearable." They moved to our couch, the one I'd spent weeks researching before buying, the one I'd insisted was worth the extra money because we'll have it for years. I watched them desecrate it, my face expressionless as the footage streamed to my phone. But I didn't move. Not yet. I needed more. At 11:48 p.m., they staggered upstairs, drunk on my alcohol and their own arrogance. They entered our bedroom, where the camera captured everything. The man's name was Robert, I learned. He worked for the city. He had a wife named Elaine and 2 children. And he was currently in my marital bed, with my wife, saying things about me I will never unhear. At precisely 2:17 a.m., I left my hotel room and drove home. I didn't slam the door when I entered. I didn't stomp up the stairs. I moved silently, deliberately, each step calculated. In the kitchen, I retrieved a glass of water and drank it slowly, preparing myself for what came next. The sounds from our bedroom guided me upstairs. Our wedding photo hung in the hallway, Candace in white, me in black, both of us smiling into a future we couldn't possibly have imagined would lead here. I straightened the frame as I passed. I pushed open the bedroom door without hesitation. The lights from the street illuminated two bodies entangled in our bed, neither aware of my presence until I cleared my throat. Candace screamed. Robert froze mid-motion, his face contorting from pleasure to terror in an instant. "Darren!" Candace shrieked, scrambling to cover herself. "What? Why are you—" I silenced her with a raised hand. Then I moved toward Robert. "Get out of my bed," I said quietly. "Look, man, I didn't know—" "She said you were—" he stammered, panic making him clumsy as he tried to disentangle himself. "You have 10 seconds, I continued in the same steady voice. He managed to free himself from the sheets and stood naked beside the bed, reaching for his clothes. "I don't need those," I said, picking up his pants and tossing them out into the hallway. "Just you. Outside. Now." "Darren, please," Candace pleaded. "Let's talk about this." But there was nothing to talk about. Nothing that could explain away years of systematic betrayal and mockery. Nothing that could repair what had been broken. Robert bolted for the door, but I was faster. I caught him by the arm, spun him around, and landed a perfect right hook to his jaw. The crack of bone meeting bone echoed in our bedroom. He staggered but didn't fall. I hit him again, this time in the nose. Blood erupted across his face. The third blow caught him in the ribs, doubling him over. "Stop it!" Candace screamed, wrapping herself in our sheets. "You're going to kill him!" I wasn't. I was being precise, calculated. Each blow served a purpose. The nose, swollen and obvious. The ribs, painful but hidden. I wanted visible evidence, but not enough to trigger serious legal consequences. Robert collapsed to his knees, wheezing and spitting blood onto our carpet. I grabbed him by the ankle and began dragging him out of the room, down the hallway, his naked body thumping against each stair as we descended. Candace followed, hysterical now. "Darren, please, this isn't you. You don't do things like this." She was right. I didn't. Until now. I dragged Robert across our polished foyer and threw open the front door. Our neighbor across the street, an early-rising retiree, was already retrieving his newspaper. He froze, staring at the scene unfolding on our pristine lawn. With one final surge of strength, I heaved Robert out the door. He tumbled down our front steps and sprawled across the grass, bloody, naked, and humiliated. "Next time you try a married woman," I called out calmly, "make sure her husband is actually out of town." I closed the door and locked it, turning to face Candace, who stood trembling in our entryway, clutching the sheets around her like armor. "Darren," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I can explain." I brushed past her and went to the kitchen, where I calmly made myself a cup of coffee. "Nothing to explain," I said, measuring grounds into the filter. "Nothing to discuss." "You don't understand," she pleaded, following me. "Our marriage hasn't been right for years. You're never here. I was lonely." I turned to face her, and whatever she saw in my expression made her step backward. 12 years, I said softly. 12 years I spent building a life for us. Working, traveling, missing holidays and weekends because you wanted a bigger house, a nicer car, better vacations. And all that time, you were bringing men into our home. "It wasn't like that," she protested weakly. "No?" I pulled out my phone and played a clip from earlier that evening. Robert's voice filled the kitchen. "So he has no idea?" Candace's laughter. "Darren? Please." The man thinks I actually love him. It's almost sad. Her face crumpled. That was just talk. Stupid talk. I didn't mean it. I pocketed my phone and picked up my coffee mug. Pack whatever you can carry. You have 30 minutes to leave. Leave? This is my house too. Check the deed, I replied. Check the mortgage. Check the paperwork you've been signing for years without reading. This hasn't been our house for a long time, Candace. It's mine. You can't do this, she whispered. I already have. As she stood there, shocked into silence, I walked past her toward the stairs. 29 minutes now. I'd hurry if I were you. While Candace frantically gathered clothes upstairs, I sat at our dining room table and set my plan in motion. First, I called a locksmith for an emergency service. All locks changed within the hour. Next, I emailed our surveillance footage, carefully edited to remove the violent confrontation but preserving all the infidelity and mockery, to a secure cloud account. Then I created an email with the link and a brief factual message. This is what Candace Matthews has been doing while her husband travels for work. No further communication on this matter will be forthcoming. I sent it to her parents, who had always treated me like family. To her boss and HR director at the PR firm where image was everything. To the leadership committee of her church group, where she portrayed herself as a model of traditional values. To her closest friends, the ones she'd been laughing with about me for years. By the time Candace came downstairs with a hastily packed suitcase, I was calmly working on my laptop. "Where am I supposed to go?" she asked. Mascara streaked down her face. "That's not my concern," I replied without looking up. "But I'd suggest finding somewhere to stay for a while. Your reputation is about to take a significant hit." Her phone buzzed, then again, and again. She looked down at it, confusion turning to horror as notifications flooded in. "What did you do?" she whispered. "I shared the truth," I said simply. "Something you've been incapable of doing for years." She unlocked her phone, reading messages that made her face drain of color. "My parents, my boss. How could you?" "How could I?" I finally looked at her. "That's the question you're asking? How could I?" Her phone continued to buzz relentlessly. With each notification, I could see her world collapsing. "You've ruined me," she said, voice breaking. "No, Candace, you did that yourself. I'm just making sure everyone knows who you really are." The doorbell rang. The locksmith had arrived. "That's my cue," I said, standing. "You should go now." "Our accounts," she said suddenly. "I need money. Just enough to—" "Check your banking app," I suggested. She did. The color drained from her face again. "You emptied everything? That's illegal. Half of that money is mine." "Actually, it's not. Remember that financial power of attorney you signed 3 years ago? The one you didn't read because you were too busy texting during our meeting with the financial advisor? It gave me full control over our joint assets in case of emergency." I smiled thinly. "I'd call this an emergency." "I'll fight you," she threatened, but her voice wavered. "I'll get a lawyer. I'll take everything." "With what money?" I asked calmly. "With what reputation? With what support system? You've spent years making me into a joke, Candace. Now you get to experience what that feels like." The locksmith knocked on the door. I opened it and gestured at the locks. "All of them, please. Complete replacement." Candace stood in our foyer, clutching her suitcase, looking like a stranger in what had been her home. For a moment, I almost felt pity. Almost. "Divorce papers will be delivered to wherever you end up staying," I said, holding the door open for her. "I suggest you sign them without contest. Otherwise, the unedited footage, including what happened to your friend Robert, goes public." She walked past me, defeated. On the front lawn, faint bloodstains marked where Robert had lain hours earlier. "I did love you once," she said quietly. "Before everything changed." I closed the door without responding and watched through the window as she wheeled her suitcase to her car. Her phone was still buzzing in her hand. Over the next week, I executed each phase of my plan with surgical precision. First, The financial separation. I had already emptied our joint accounts, but now I went further. I canceled all shared credit cards. I contacted our investment broker and froze her access to our portfolio. I removed her as beneficiary from every policy, account, and asset. Next, the legal framework. My attorney filed for divorce on grounds of adultery, supported by irrefutable evidence. The petition included a request for a temporary restraining order, citing emotional distress and fear of retaliation. The judge granted it immediately. Then, methodical exclusion. I changed all passwords, email accounts, streaming services, cloud storage, security systems. I redirected her mail to return to sender. I notified our insurance providers, utility companies, and property management that she was no longer an authorized party. Finally, reputation destruction. This required no additional effort on my part. The footage had already done its work. Candace's carefully cultivated image as a respectable professional had evaporated overnight. Her PR firm placed her on unpaid leave pending an investigation into potential violation of moral conduct clauses. Her church group sent a formal letter asking her to refrain from attending services until further notice. Her parents, staunch traditionalists who had often spoken about the sanctity of marriage, weren't taking her calls. As for Robert, his consequences were equally severe. The edited footage, showing just enough to identify him but not enough to implicate me in assault, had reached his wife and his supervisors at the city office. By week's end, he had moved out of his family home and was placed on administrative leave. His wife had filed for divorce and sole custody of their children. The orbital fracture I'd given him required surgery. His health insurance, through his suspended city job, was now in question. I monitored all of this from my home, which felt strangely empty but somehow cleaner. I returned to work, explaining to my boss that my food poisoning had resolved quickly and I'd managed to handle most meetings virtually. He was relieved. We couldn't afford to lose the Pittsburgh client. On the 7th day, Candace attempted to contact me, first through a burner email account, then through a friend's phone, and finally through a handwritten letter delivered by courier. Each communication followed the same pattern: initial apology, followed by rationalization, culminating in demands. She needed money. She needed access to her things. She needed me to stop destroying her life. I didn't respond to any of them. On the 10th day, her sister showed up at my door. I had always liked Megan. She was the more serious sibling, less concerned with appearances. "She's staying with me," Megan said when I opened the door. "She has nowhere else to go." "That's kind of you," I replied neutrally. "Not kindness. Family obligation." Megan looked tired. "She told me everything, or her version of everything. I'd like to hear yours." I invited her in and offered her coffee. While it brewed, I showed her selected clips from the surveillance footage, enough to confirm the infidelity but sparing her the more graphic details. "Jesus," she whispered, pushing my phone away. "I knew she was cheating, but this—" "You knew?" I asked, surprised. "I suspected. She changed over the years, became harder, more entitled." Megan accepted the coffee I handed her. "I didn't know it was this calculated, though, or that there were so many." "At least 5 that I've identified," I said. She shook her head slowly. "What happens now?" "Now the legal system takes over. The divorce should be straightforward given the circumstances and our prenup. She'll get nothing." "Nothing?" Megan looked concerned. "Darren, I know what she did was unforgivable, but she'll be destitute." "She has marketable skills," I said evenly. "She'll find work eventually. Somewhere. Not in this city. Not after what you did to her reputation." "After what she did to her reputation," I corrected. "I just provided the evidence." Megan sighed deeply. "She's talking about contesting the divorce, about countersuing for emotional distress, about pressing charges for what you did to Robert." I had anticipated this. "She can try. It won't work." Because of the videos? Because she signed agreements she never bothered to read? Because the evidence against her is overwhelming? Because no lawyer will take her case without substantial upfront payment, which she doesn't have? I sipped my coffee calmly. And because Robert won't press charges, not when the full video would have to become evidence. Megan studied me, seeing something new in my face. You planned all of this? I protected myself, I corrected. Something I should have done years ago. When she left, she paused at the door. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. You deserved better than what she gave you. It was the first real apology I'd received from anyone in Candace's life. I nodded my acknowledgement, and she walked away. The divorce proceedings moved swiftly, expedited by the overwhelming evidence and Candace's limited resources to fight back. She found an attorney willing to work on contingency, hoping to claim some portion of our marital assets. It was a miscalculation. In the first hearing, my attorney presented the prenuptial agreement with its clear infidelity clause, which prohibited any financial claims if adultery could be proven. The judge, an older woman with shrewd eyes, reviewed the edited footage without expression. Your Honor, Candace's attorney argued, my client acknowledges the indiscretion, but maintains that the distribution of this private footage constitutes emotional distress and harassment. Furthermore, Mr. Matthews committed assault against a third party, which should be considered in these proceedings. My attorney countered smoothly. The distribution was limited and factual. As for the alleged assault, no charges have been filed, and there is no evidence before this court. The judge peered over her reading glasses. Does the respondent have any evidence of assault to present? Candace's attorney hesitated. Not at this time, Your Honor. The victim is reluctant to come forward. I imagine so, the judge murmured almost to herself. Then, louder. The prenuptial agreement appears legally binding, and the infidelity clause has been clearly triggered. Unless the respondent can provide compelling evidence that the agreement should be invalidated, I am inclined to enforce it as written. Candace broke down then, sobbing openly in the courtroom. He's taken everything from me, she cried. My home, my money, my reputation, everything. The judge's expression hardened. Mrs. Matthews, this court deals in facts, not emotions. The fact is that you violated your marriage vows repeatedly and documented in your own words a pattern of deception and disrespect toward your husband. These are the consequences of those choices. 3 weeks later, we were back in court for the final judgment. Candace looked diminished, her designer clothes replaced by a simple dress that had seen better days. She sat alone. Her attorney had withdrawn after she couldn't make the payments. The judge's ruling was comprehensive and devastatingly final. The house remained mine. The investment accounts remained mine. Even the Audi, technically leased in my name, was to be returned to me. Candace received her personal belongings, a small retirement account that predated our marriage, and a nominal one-time payment of $5,000 that I had agreed to provide solely to expedite the proceedings. When the gavel fell, finalizing our divorce, Candace collapsed against her chair, her body racked with sobs. Her sister Megan, seated in the back of the courtroom, moved forward to comfort her. I stood, buttoned my jacket, and walked out without looking back. My attorney caught up with me in the hallway. Congratulations, she said, extending her hand. Clear victory. I shook it mechanically. Thank you for your work. Will you be staying in the city? She asked. After all this? I hadn't decided yet. Part of me wanted to leave, to start fresh somewhere without the memories. Another part refused to be driven away from the home I'd built. For now, I answered. At least until I decide what's next. She nodded, understanding. Well, if you need anything else, you know where to find me. Outside the courthouse, spring sunshine washed over the steps. I stood for a moment, feeling the warmth on my face and the strange lightness in my chest. It wasn't happiness, not yet, but it was liberation. My phone buzzed with a text from my company's travel coordinator. New client meeting in Seattle next week. Available? I typed back a simple, yes. Then I walked to my car, alone but unbroken. 6 months after the divorce, I was having dinner with a colleague when I saw Robert across the restaurant. His face had healed, but there was a new heaviness to him. He was dining alone, nursing a glass of whiskey and staring at his phone. He didn't notice me until I was standing at his table. "Robert," I said quietly. His head snapped up and fear flickered across his face. "Darren, I'm not here to cause trouble," I assured him, keeping my voice low. "I just wanted to know how things turned out for you." He swallowed hard. "About as well as you'd expect. Divorced, joint custody, but the kids know why. Different job, lower pay. Pretty much starting over at 43. I nodded, feeling neither satisfaction nor pity. "For what it's worth," he said, looking down at his drink. "I didn't know how serious it was with you two. She made it sound like your marriage was just a formality." "That doesn't make it better," I replied. "No," he agreed, "it doesn't." I turned to go, but he stopped me with a question. "Do you know where she ended up?" "Candace, I mean." "No," I answered truthfully. "And I don't care to." I returned to my table where my colleague raised an eyebrow. "Old friend?" "No," I said, unfolding my napkin. "Just someone I used to know." 2 weeks later, Megan called me. We'd maintained a sparse but civil communication since the divorce. "I thought you should know," she said without preamble. "Candace is moving to Arizona. She found a job at a small marketing firm there." "I see," I replied, unsure why she was telling me this. "She wanted me to ask if you'd consider letting her have some of the furniture. From the house." I closed my eyes, feeling a flicker of the old anger. "No. I told her you'd say that." Megan sighed. "She's different now, Darren. Humbled, maybe even genuinely remorseful." "I'm glad for her personal growth," I said, not bothering to hide the irony in my voice. "But it doesn't change anything between us." "I know," she acknowledged. "I just thought, well, it doesn't matter. Take care of yourself, Darren." After we hung up, I walked through my house, my empty, quiet house. I'd sold most of the furniture Candace had chosen and replaced it with pieces that suited my own taste. I'd repainted the walls, rearranged the rooms, erased nearly every trace of our life together. In the study, I opened my laptop and checked my work calendar. 3 trips planned for the next month: Denver, Boston, San Francisco. Good clients, important meetings. I'd been promoted twice since the divorce, my focus sharper without the constant undercurrent of betrayal. I thought about Candace starting over in Arizona, about Robert piecing his life back together, about the wreckage my calculated revenge had created. Did I regret it? Not the revenge itself, perhaps only that it had been necessary at all. My phone pinged with an email from a real estate agent I'd contacted. She'd found several promising properties in Chicago, where our company's headquarters was located. A fresh start in a new city, a promotion to senior vice president, and no ghosts lurking in the corners of an empty house. I began composing my response, feeling something close to anticipation for the first time in years. Not happiness, not yet, but possibility. Sometimes winning isn't about what you gain. Sometimes it's simply about walking away intact when someone tried to destroy you. I hit send on the email and closed my laptop. Tomorrow would be another day, another city, another chance. And this time, truly, I would be the one leaving town. And so, we've reached the end of today's story. Was it what you expected, or did it take a twist you didn't see coming? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Share them in the comments below, and let's get a conversation going. If this story kept you hooked, make sure to hit that like button. And if you're new here or just haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time to join our community. I bring you fresh, captivating stories every day, so click that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.